And so I finally made the decision to, and that's when I really started to kind of see what I can do inside of my environment to improve my sleep. Now, that was when I lived in sober living, and my roommate at the time snored like a freaking train, and it was so annoying.
Because I was the kind of guy, like, I partied up until the last minute. Like, if I had to be at work, I was constantly looking at the clock, and it was almost like that anxiety, panic work's coming. Oh, I can squeeze one more hour. Oh, as long as I get to bed 1 hour.
Yeah.
So for me, it was never like an active addiction, I think. I will say, even today, though, I still don't sleep well.
I just tell people, listen, I'm going to probably tell you something you've heard a bunch in the past, and you're probably not going to want to hear it from me. But it's important as you're setting up your new routine and new life to have new habits for sleep too.
Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, we've got Benjamin B.
What's happening, everyone?
And we got Dr. T.
Hello, everybody.
First things first, thank you for tuning in on the podcast app, whichever one that you choose to use. And thank you for watching on YouTube. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us. info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message and go to our Facebook support group. It's at Real Recovery Talk Support Group. Real Recovery Talk Support Group. And I'm emphasizing talk because there is a Real Recovery page out there. So you have to put the talk in there. See, talk. And I'm going to have this in the video. Talk. Real Recovery Talk Support Group. And I think we have over 100 members in there now.
Yeah, I think it's at 103 as of today.
Yep. And Ben has undertaken this to really beef this up and have some conversations in there, ask questions, ask any of us, either myself, Ben, or Destiny. Or Destiny's in there, Dr. T, anything, really. Have conversations amongst yourselves. And eventually, you know, one thing about these Facebook groups, they eventually kind of run themselves. And yeah, they're fun.
I will say this too. I keep mentioning the people that comment. Like, the people that comment have some good experience. Obviously I know these people, and I'm like, and they're coming from
A good place.
Good places, for real.
Yeah. Yeah, so make sure you go in there. I do believe you have to put your email in order to get approved. I hope you have to put your email in because we want your email address.
Why do we want it, Tom?
So we can send you our weekly newsletter that's going to have our episodes from the previous week and a nice little description in there and some pictures of us. And, you know, you can look at Tambini's beautiful face and Ben and I's ugly mugs.
Extra, read all about it.
If you didn't know any better, you'd think that we kind of planned that out.
But we didn't.
But we didn't.
Is that a new catchphrase?
No.
Oh.
Anyways.
He's still grumpy.
Still grumpy.
No, I am not. Anyways, we are going to talk about a topic that often gets overlooked, but is very, very important. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
Sleep. Sleep is very important when getting clean and sober, and we're here to discuss why. And thankfully, we have the doctor with us. It can break this down a little bit. So, T, why don't you just kick us off?
How do you turn a vampire back into a human?
Yeah.
That's essentially what we're doing.
Yeah, in a roundabout way. You know, most drug addicts are nocturnal.
They are, which is a hard thing to do because our brains are not made for that, right? From an evolution standpoint, but also just the way sleep has been studied and how it works. It's a difficult thing, but basically there's 4 stages of sleep. We go through those stages in multiple sleep cycles a night. And it goes from like light sleep to slow wave sleep all the way to REM. And REM is where we dream. And then, you know, the cycle restarts itself. Of importance to us specifically, and even people who don't use substances, but each and every substance that is used out there affects each stage of sleep in a different way. So to go through each and every individual one would be very cumbersome. So just in general, we know that all of these substances affect our sleep cycle, which thus leads to insomnia, whether it's, difficulty falling asleep, difficulty staying asleep, or both. Just the substances themselves. We're not even yet going into the lifestyle that accompanies, why people start experiencing difficulty sleeping in active addiction and then eventually when they're going through recovery.
I would guess probably 90% of clients that sit in front of you when they first meet you say they can't sleep. You think that 90%? What would you say?
That's a good number. I would say that's probably the top one or two things that is always addressed on every single visit, especially early on, in the recovery process.
I think I tend to look it over in the beginning, like I just kind of breeze by it. But the reality of the situation is like you can tell a couple weeks into treatment when somebody has it because their behavior is generally affected very heavily. They become erratic, etc.
So I think it's important to talk a little bit about when people are actively using, and I'll reference myself. When I was actively drinking alcoholically, I thought that, and I didn't think, it was actually true. I could not sleep unless I was extremely drunk, and eventually to the point where I had massive amounts of alcohol in me and benzos, Xanax in particular. So, my sleep issues started in my alcoholism. Now, when I removed the alcohol and I removed the benzos and it didn't take long, and I distinctly remember this, it took maybe a week and my body was in a pretty healthy sleep cycle. And I've shared this story numerous times on the podcast, so I won't tell all the details, but when I was in detox, I remember seeing a couple of guys, a couple people out in the smoking section, and they looked like they were on something. And I'm like, what are you on? And they're like, oh, we're on Seroquel. We just took our Seroquel or whatever, however they worded it. I don't know.
The detox lingo is their Quillin.
Yeah, Quillin. And I'm like, oh, cool. How do I get that? And, they said, well, it's for sleep. Just tell the doctor that you can't sleep and you'll get Seroquel. And boom, what do you know? He writes me 100 milligram once a night. And I go up to the nurse's station and take the Seroquel, and it knocks me out. And so I ended up on this cycle of being on Seroquel for 6 months, ate a bunch of garbage food, gained a ton of weight. And, so it put me in this. But the reason that I bring this up is it in that roughly 7 to 10 day period of my last drink to fast forward 7 to 10 days, I was sleeping normal. But it was the addictive mindset of, wanting something to feel a little bit differently that made me go down that Seroquel path. And look, hindsight's 2020. I wished I wouldn't have, but I did. And, so I caution people to, and I know we're going to get into this as far as the medication standpoint, but I wanted to bring that up because a lot of times people in their active addictions, they legit can't sleep because they're so used to getting high. And if you're not high, you can't fall asleep. You're sick. What was that like for you, Ben, when you were can you remember a time when either you were out of drugs or you maybe in the off chance that, because we've all had those days where I'm not going to use anything today. I'm not going to drink today. And you do, but boy, is it hard to fall asleep.
I would say I was kind of more in a position where it'd be hard for me to recollect specifically to your question because I was the kind of guy, like I partied up until the last minute. Like if I had to be at work, I was constantly looking at the clock and it was almost like that anxiety, panic work's coming. Oh, I can squeeze 1 more hour. Oh, as long as I get to bed 1 hour. And So for me, it was never like an active addiction. I think I will say even today though, I still don't sleep well.
Oh, good. So maybe we can help you get.
Well, that's what I was thinking about that while we were going over this. Because, to be straightforward, we talk addiction, substance abuse, alcoholism, but the reality of the situation is I think this might just help everybody because sleep is vital. I am a terrible sleeper. I probably get up. I got up last night at least 5 times.
Really?
No, yeah. 1,000% at least 5 times.
All right, T, come on, let's get to work on this, man. So active addiction, people have a hard time sleeping.
Yes.
Okay, but let's fast forward now. We're in recovery, or we're entering into recovery, and let's just say hypothetically you're going into a detox facility. You have a hard time sleeping. You meet with Dr. Tambini, and she's going to maybe give you some. What's that process like to maybe kickstart somebody's sleeping patterns?
I think the first thing is always going to be education to the person and managing their expectations, something we always talk about. Like, listen, you've had issues with sleep probably for some time now, whether they originated before your substance use started or they started after, whatever that is, just that amount of time that your body and your mind is in that routine, it's going to take time for your body and your mind to re-regulate. So number one, manage expectations. Let people know ahead of time. It takes work on their end and our end to help support them through it, and just being open and honest with it.
Can I touch on the expectations part too? I want the families to hear this too, because a lot of times family members will say, oh, my kid came to you and now you put him on Seroquel or Trazodone or Doxepin, or I sent him there to get off of drugs. And here's the thing. I hold the opinion, and I'd like to hear yours on this, Dr. T. The fact of the matter is, if somebody comes in here withdrawing, they're still having post-acute withdrawal, they're so volatile. They're like, while I wish it was a perfect world, you could say, yes, come in here and don't touch any sleep meds. The reality of the situation is, if they don't get a little bit of sleep after that detox process, you're going to lose them in the treatment process anyway. They're going to, be irrational, probably AMA. You do kind of have to meet them in the middle in a lot of cases, and I think that's where your professional judgment really comes in. When is somebody seeking an outside solution to, I don't know, healthier habits, if you will, versus like, maybe we need to, if this guy can get some sleep, then maybe he'll start thinking clearer. Yeah,
I think to backtrack a little bit, lack of sleep and the effects that it has on people during the day, irritability, being grumpy.
Why you look at me?
The anxiety, the inability to like cognitively have a clear cognition, the focus, the concentration, all of that is affected by lack of sleep or having broken sleep or whatever that is. So people don't always acknowledge that. And that's why it's really important for sleep education. But I just tell people, listen, I'm going to probably tell you something you've heard a bunch in the past, and you're probably not going to want to hear it from me. But it's important as you're setting up your new routine and new life to have new habits for sleep too. Most importantly is going to be setting yourself up with a routine. Simplest thing, saying, have a goal to go to bed at the same time every night and wake up at the same time every day. And if within that goal, and that's just like maybe day 1, day 2, right? And then you add on tasks to it. So when we talk about sleep hygiene, no daytime napping. Taking naps during the day really affects your sleep cycle at night. So daytime napping is a big thing I try to educate on. Ben took an hour nap today because he probably
thrown
didn't
right under the bus.
Sleep well.
You did?
I did. Yeah. 50 minutes, 50. 50 minutes.
Okay.
But then that's when people can get really stuck in this, downward spiral because they take a nap and then tonight they're not tired when it's time to go to bed. So then they go to bed later, they wake up later, they take a nap again the next day, and then you can get into this bad habit or routine. So one thing I try to tell people is just to make your body and your mind tired during the day. That doesn't mean you have to go and exercise, do something crazy. That just means exhaust everything you can, like mentally and physically, to your ability, wherever you're at, to help make yourself tired for the night. The other thing is to keep in mind what you're taking in your body every day. So if you use nicotine, the half-life of nicotine is about 2 hours, but if you keep smoking, vaping, chewing, dipping, whatever your vice is, you're going to keep stacking on that throughout the day. So and nicotine's a stimulant, right? So it keeps us awake. It keeps us energized, whether we acknowledge it or feel like it is. That stays in your system. So when it's time to go to sleep, your body's fighting that. Now throw in caffeine on top of that. Caffeine has a half-life of about 8 hours. So think about it. If you drink coffee at 8 a.m., it's still in your system in the afternoon. And then if you drink another cup of coffee in the afternoon, and then maybe at a night meeting, you have your coffee's a stimulant as well. So you now have that in your system. Sugar, that's a big one. So
boy, life is getting no fun real quick. No naps, no sugar.
I have something to say after you're done.
Okay. So I talk about those things, diet. It also takes time for your tummy and your body to digest food. So trying not to eat like at least 3 hours before bed is important because your body and your mind has to be ready to go to bed. So making sure you give that ample time frame. And then lastly, I try to tell them, obviously in the inpatient setting, they don't have access to like their phone most of the time. So they're not scrolling on social media or whatever. But if you're at home, that's a big thing. Try not to use social media, your phone, anything that could be stimulating to your brain, at least 2 hours before bedtime.
Wow. Okay, so this is funny.
I break all the rules.
Yeah. On Wednesday nights, I break literally every one of those rules. Let me explain. I go to my meeting on Wednesday nights. It's at 7:00. It's a cigar meeting. So we all sit around a table. It's at 7 p.m. We sit around a table, smoke a cigar, drink coffee, and then I go home hungry because I haven't eaten since, maybe 2 or 3 in the afternoon. So then I get home and what's interesting is the coffee and the nicotine, it stimulates your appetite. So I'm not hungry during the meeting, but then I go home, I get a shower. So I'm stimulated from the coffee, from the nicotine. And then it's like, well, I need to eat something because I'm kind of hungry. So then I go and find some bullshit in the pantry that's sugary. Maybe it's a bowl of cereal or fig bar or something, a kid's snack. Mm-hmm. And I get in bed. At this time, it's about 9:30, maybe 10. And then I'm watching YouTube. So I think I'm breaking all those rules.
You are.
And then I wonder why every single Thursday, if you ever notice, I'm like super zonked out. Because it's just like, and cigars in and of themselves, I think, have a massive amount of nicotine in them.
Yes.
They do.
And that aftertaste. I can't sleep with that aftertaste.
No? That doesn't bother me too much, but
You can't brush it out of there in one brush.
Listerine.
Still.
Yeah, you get used to it. But I do think that, listen, aside from my Wednesday nights, though, sleep is something that, there was a period of time in my life where sleep was something that I actually studied on myself. And if I look back when I was on the Seroquel, and I knew that it was a crutch for me, and I knew I didn't need it, but I was so far in that like it was like one of those things I just kind of kept kicking the can down the road. I'll come off of it whenever. And so I finally made the decision to, and that's when I really started to kind of see what I can do inside of my environment to improve my sleep. Now, that was when I lived in sober living, and my roommate at the time snored like a freaking train, and it was so annoying. But I ended up getting, some earplugs. And one of the best things that I found, and still to this day, and I've talked about this, is reading for me. If I pick up a book It doesn't matter if it's the best book, action-packed book, 5 pages in, and I'm like falling asleep, and then I'll just close the book, put it on the end table, and I'm asleep. That was one of the easiest things that I found for me, and that's what I started doing. Whenever I lived in sober living, I would put my earplugs in, pick up a book of whatever, and start reading, and then I would fall asleep. And then I started working on the other stuff. Have you heard of Sean Stevenson? Mm-mm. Sean Stevenson has a book called Sleep Smarter. He's going to be at Coaching Con.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I'll attend that.
Yep.
I don't know.
He's awesome. He's got a huge podcast as well called The Model Health Show. He's been podcasting for years. Probably he's one of the like OGs of podcasting. But he's got a phenomenal story. He was on Mind Pump probably 6 months ago. So I'll share the episode. Maybe I'll put the episode in the show notes and you can check it all out. But he wrote a book called Sleep Smarter and gets into a lot of this stuff about how we can set up our environment to foster good sleep, which Ben?
But not to, throw Ben's life out there, but right now with what you're doing too, like your diet, like my husband as well, he'll wake up at like 1 a.m. and be like ravage hunger. And because he's dieting and, you're preparing for a show. So diet plays into that too. Also like life circumstances, we all have crazy things going on with our lives and we don't process it during the day because we're so busy with everything. And then when we do get in bed, that our mind starts racing and we can't stop our brains from working. And I hear that a lot from people in treatment and not in treatment. I can't stop these racing thoughts.
That's me.
I'll be
right
up at
there.
2 like you'll see the Instagram memes like 2 a.m. I'm Googling how tall is Jesus. Like I can't stop my brain from, racing at night. And then I'll try to bring back the conversation to like what you said. Okay, when you go into bed at night, then that's when we need to slow the brain. We have to stop the brain. So we have to pick some form of meditation, whatever that might be for you, journaling, reading a book. We have to not stop, but calm those thoughts down and try to clear our mind before we actually try to fall asleep. Because if you don't do that, then you're going to have this recurrent issue.
I'm a hopeless case.
No, you're not. You're not. I think that one, you have 2 kids and that makes it tough too. Do your kids sleep with you?
Kai usually jumps in the bed some point between midnight and like 5 a.m.
So any hour throughout the night, really?
Yeah.
What do you do? Like, why are you waking up?
Go to the bathroom. Sometimes I need a snack. I get really thirsty. All reasons. I just can't. I don't know.
Do you have a hard time falling asleep?
Real hard time falling asleep. That, like Dr. T just said, like my brain, as soon as I lay down, I start thinking. And I think that's super common with people in early recovery. For me, it's just been a lifelong thing. Like I remember even in high school, I would like jump out of bed in the middle of the night to like write notes in a notebook so I could remember stuff and then go back to bed.
Well, I think there's something good about that. I don't know that there's anything you can do to control that. I'm sure there is, but that I would see being somewhat of a productive type thing. You can't stop ideas from coming into your mind. And if they're good enough, then, maybe you were supposed to wake up and write that idea down. But a lot of stuff I have found with myself and other people that I've talked to, which I'm glad we're talking about this because I kind of geek out on a little bit. There are environmental changes that can be made. 90% of the stuff is environmental. Like very little of it has to do with like, you do have the people that have like restless leg syndrome and stuff like that.
That's the worst.
Physical ailments that are going to prevent you from falling asleep. But that's, I think, Dr. T, correct me if I'm wrong, that's probably a very small percentage.
Yeah.
So if you look at like your environment, a couple of things that I did was blackout curtains for sure. Now, and I've actually kind of gone back on if I even think that blackout curtains are a good idea, because let me explain why. When in the morning, when the sun comes up, I want to wake up with the sun. And if the blackout curtains are there and I don't know the sun's coming up, I'm a lot more tired, because it's like it messes with my circadian rhythm in a way, Again, pre like kids and marriage and stuff, when I was really kind of geeking out on getting my sleep good, putting my phone in another room was something that I actually did. I would put my phone in another room. I wouldn't have any lights in my room, even to the point of an alarm clock. Nothing. When it was dark, it was pitch black, like these sorts of things that you could, and there's a lot of interesting studies coming out now about like red light therapy. Mm-hmm. And these lights, we're sitting underneath these lights however many hours out of the day.
I was going to ask about blue light blockers.
Mm-hmm.
So you can talk on that.
I mean, there's just a lot of data out there about the blue light with tablets, computers, and how it affects us and our ability in our brains and our ability to focus, and in turn affects our sleep. There is some data out there that shows they are beneficial. I think that's each an individual person, depending on what they do all day. If you sit in front of a computer all day, definitely, but I think the biggest culprit is our phone. We don't realize how much we're looking at our phone all day, every day. Most people don't, at least.
That the phone gets me, and that's really accurate right there. I mean, unfortunately, because of what I do for work, my phone ringer has to be on every night, which means any social media, because there's people that are on social media at 2 a.m. If a notification on Facebook comes up, it's like it dings, but I have to be able to hear those text messages, those phone calls in case there's an emergency with Rock. Someone has a seizure in the middle of the night, whatever the case may be, like I have to be available 24/7 personally. But to kind of start talking towards the solution of it too, prior to us starting to hit record, we were talking about your approach with people that are having a hard time sleeping in early recovery. And you said, I know what CBT is, but I think you said CBTI.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to explain what that is and like how you go to that before? I think you said you do that before medications or something.
We try to, but that would be more relevant in the outpatient setting, because CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is meant to be over a long period of time, 6 to 8 weeks. CBTI is specific for insomnia. So people are trained on how to help people who are struggling with sleep, specifically over the 6 to 8 week period. And it focuses on their cognitions and their behaviors, the things that we've just talked about. And it helps hold them accountable. It helps them, we call it like sleep hygiene, create a sleep hygiene, sleep routine that's doable with their current life situation, and how to set themselves up for, to learn how to sleep, I guess, better. And they give them different techniques in different ways. Now, in the acute setting, with what I deal with, mostly in the detox, residential, even in the PHP setting, it's really difficult to have patients do CBTI when they're doing, a bunch of other clinical activities. So a lot of what I focus on with them is just education and reinforcement and accountability. So sitting with people, having them set up what is their sleep routine? What does sleep hygiene mean to them? What are they doing during their day that's affecting their sleep at night? And then coming up with a good routine. And then every time we meet every week is just kind of going over a journal about how things went, what they did, what works, what doesn't, and then working with them over a period of time.
I think like on our end, at the PHP level of care, we're really able to hone in on it when like the unmanageability starts to come out. And we see this often, and Nick, our director of operations, is all over this with the cameras. But we'll have a client like come in the next day for group, and they're falling asleep through the whole group. And Nick will jump on the cameras and rewind them back and be like, well, you're sitting in the living room playing video games till 4 a.m. And we kind of got to show them like why the manageability aspect isn't there for this. And, you know, by the time they get to IOP and they're looking for work and they got to be at work at 8, 9 a.m., like this isn't going to work. So a lot of times, in my opinion, these interventions like have to occur at a point in time where like the client is able to see, okay, this isn't working. Like as much as we would like to be proactive and address it up front, usually there has to be some sort of consequence that they're suffering. And we have to point out to them like, hey, dude, if you're falling asleep in group, you're not getting what you need to out of this. This isn't working for you. What are you doing in the middle of the night? You know, and how does that match your behavior in active addiction? And they'll tell you the same thing. Like, oh, I used to stay up doing meth all night and playing video games. Literally the same thing. But these things, you know, when somebody's been out for years and years with that pattern, it takes time to break, and it can be a real struggle.
Mm-hmm, definitely. Routines and patterns have to change. And I think that's a really hard thing for people to be honest about and acknowledge it, and then be willing to suffer a little bit at the expense of their sleep in order to get better. Because it takes work. It's not something that happens overnight, is what I try to tell people.
I like that you brought that up, that they're going to have to suffer a little bit and get through like a point and period of time that's going to be uncomfortable. You might not sleep for a few nights.
Right.
It's you're going to get your biggest bang for your buck in terms of like just all around feel good. There's nothing that can replace a good night's sleep. There's no medication that can replace. I mean, I'm not talking to like people that are clinically depressed. They're probably listening like, you know what, fuck you, you know. And I don't ever curse on here, but I just did, so I'm going to have to drop an explicit thing on the.
I think it's just one of those days.
It's just one of
Tom's
those days,
grumpy.
you know. But no, I mean, I think that although we're talking to drug addicts and alcoholics, it goes for everybody. And sleep is one of the most neglected things with people. And even those that, you know, if you have a loved one that is struggling with addiction and they're causing you to stay up all hours of the night because you don't know where they are or what they're doing or if they're even going to make it home, you got to work on that, you know, and you have to prioritize your sleep, and you have to foster an environment that's going to allow you to get good quality sleep. And it's very important. So I think this was a good episode. We needed to do this. People need to understand sleep is important.
Yes.
Right, Doc?
Right. And we can briefly, I don't know if you guys want to touch on medication management.
Sure. You'll be okay. We got about 3 minutes.
All right. Yeah. I was wondering if it was worth the part 2.
Oh.
No, let's jump on it.
Yeah, jump on it.
I mean,
Yeah.
just briefly, it's not like we're trying to give anyone advice about anything in terms of, you know, go ask your doctor for these things. But going back to your question about parents asking questions about medication management, the American Society of Sleep Medicine, there's really 4 classes of medications. They say number 1 is going to be the behavioral things we talked about before you even explore sleep medications. After that, you have your benzodiazepine derivatives, which are not really pertaining to where we're at, but there are some long-acting benzodiazepines that have been shown to be beneficial.
It's like your Xanax and Valium.
Lunesta, Restoril, they're long-acting benzos. So less addictive property, longer acting to help to keep people asleep through the night.
I didn't realize those were benzos. Oh.
So those are a conversation, you know, risk-benefit conversation people have to have where they're at in their lives. The other one are the non-benzodiazepine derivatives, but are structurally very similar, and that's going to be like your Ambiens. And those, again, are controlled substances, risk-benefit, have to have that discussion with your physician. The other classes of medications you have are newer orexin antagonists. So orexin is in your brain. It's responsible for stimulating wakefulness in your hypothalamus. These medications were developed to block the orexin Those are also controlled substances. Again, another conversation, risk-benefit ratio. The two classes that are pertinent to what we're doing, the other one are melatonin agonists. So not melatonin itself, but medications specifically developed to stimulate your melatonin receptors, like in a very specific matter. Those are always an option for our patients, and I always tell them about that. The other one is called Doxepin. Doxepin is oh my gosh, I'm going to have a cough attack. Sorry, we're going to have to cut this out. Sorry.
A cough attack? What does that mean?
Sorry. So Doxepin is a tricyclic antidepressant by trade, and it acts on your histamine receptors, your serotonin receptors, and it does help with sleep induction and sleep maintenance. So that's one of the medications we use quite often, even in the outpatient setting for patients who are in recovery or not in recovery. It has a pretty good side effect profile. It's not a controlled substance, is not abused. So those, the melatonin agonists and the Doxepin are usually what we start with. Then, everyone's different and you go through, different things. But all the meds you hear in our setting, like the Trazodones, the Seroquels, the Remerons, those are all different types of antidepressants or mood stabilizers, but at lower doses because of how they act on the brain can help with sleep induction and maintenance. Each is tailored to each person. Each has its own different side effect profile. So I just go through each and every one with each patient and just kind of ask them, what have you tried? What has worked? What hasn't worked? Based on the side effect profile, we'll make a decision and then kind of go from there.
Yeah. Well, the medication thing I think is I don't know. I would venture to say last ditch effort type thing.
Agreed.
Try all the behavioral stuff first and then, go down the medication avenue, which some people need. There's no way around it. My dad's on sleep meds, but he's going to be 70 years old and he breaks all the rules though too. But it's like, I ain't going to try and enforce him on him because he's 70. Like, if you want to watch YouTube all night, go ahead. I don't care. Anyways, well, that was good.
Yep.
Ben, any final thoughts?
No, not that I can think of off the top of my head.
T?
No. Oh, I do.
Oh.
10, 3, 2, 1, 0. So the 10 is 10 hours before bed, avoidance of caffeine. The 3...
That's crazy.
Okay, the three is avoidance 3 hours before bed of alcohol, nicotine, anything of that matter. 2 hours before bed is food avoidant. Try to not eat at least 2 hours before bed. 1 is 1 hour before bed. No phone, no anything. Just lay in bed, do your meditation, get in your sleep hygiene, sleep routine. The 0 is how many times you press snooze in the morning on your alarm. So you don't press snooze because sometimes the more you sleep, the worse you feel. And it's better to have a time to go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time every day, even if you feel tired, because your body and mind will appreciate that.
That's probably my problem is I go to bed at different times and wake up at different times, but it's according to the schedule I got going on.
I think just fall within range.
Yeah.
If you can get to bed between 10 and 11 and wake up between 6 and 7, you're probably, good. But that's kind of that's pretty intense. There.
Well,
I'll start with the 0. I haven't used an alarm clock since I got sober. You believe that? Unless it's like I absolutely have to be at the airport at 5:30 in the morning. Then I'll use an alarm clock. But I've probably used an alarm clock, I would say, 10 times in 13 years. Is that pretty impressive? You like that?
It is, but I tell you what, if we keep going with this episode, I'm going to be talking about your pillow pretty quickly here.
Oh, we better wrap this up.
Tom sleeps with rather than a pillow now. I'll just disclose this part. He uses a beach towel for his pillow.
No, not now, but if I have to, I will. I got a new pillow.
Oh, you got a new pillow. All right.
Yeah. That's a story for off air.
Yeah, definitely an off-air story. for Tom's sake.
I had the same pillow essentially for 10 years and it was gross and I couldn't part with it. And then I got shamed into parting with it and I haven't found a pillow yet that is the same. So I would use
That doesn't surprise me in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I would use a beach towel because I don't like fluffy memory foam pillows, all that crap. I want something firm and clumpy, you know?
The one thing that jumped out to me with the caffeine, you go to an 8:30 p.m. 12-step meeting, and half the people in there got a supersize
Dunkin'.
Monster or Dunkin' Donut or Starbucks, like.
And those, and they're not black. The coffee.
Oh,
It's-
they're loaded with it's like dessert. It's a cake.
Yeah, cream and sugar and vanilla swirl and all this crap. So yeah, don't do that either.
Oh, Hannah's calling me.
All right, that is it for this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Thank you for tuning in. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us, info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message and join our Facebook group, please. Real Recovery Talk support group. That is it. We will see y'all later.